Hi, this is Rossi Eason, the founder of the Restore Black America Foundation. And as you already know, if you've been listening to our interview series, I like to bring on guests to discuss topics that are related to the 6 areas that we cover in the Restore Black America book, which are, of course, culture, economics, politics, family, health, and spirituality. Now, today's interview is going to be in the area of restoring black economics. Now, I have a special guest on today by the name of Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Now, Dr. Kimbro wrote a very popular book that I actually read myself entitled The Wealth Choice, Success Secrets of Black Millionaires. So today I want to discuss what some of those success secrets are and how we can utilize them to create a more financially abundant lifestyle for ourselves. So, Dr. Kimbro, are you there?
I am right here. How are you doing, my brother?
I am doing well. I'm so glad to have you on today. What I want to do, just to kind of get started, would you mind getting started by giving us just a little bit of a background about yourself as on a personal level, as well as what led you up to writing the Secrets of Black Millionaires book?
Sure, no problem. My backflap story is undergrad, University of Oklahoma, doctorate, Northwestern. When I was at school, I studied wealth and poverty and leadership, and the best advice I probably had ever been given came from my committee at Northwestern, who said to me, he said, Dennis, when you are writing your dissertation, don't look at it trying to fulfill your academic requirements. Look at this project as your first book. And when I was granted the doctorate, I turned to my wife and I said, I think I got a book on my hands, but I don't want to study wealth and poverty. I just want to study wealth. And I don't want to study underdeveloped countries. I want to study African Americans. So that sort of galvanized, and I worked in corporate for about 12 years and taking time away to pursue what I really want to do. And then in November 1986, my life really changed forever when I wrote a series of articles for which was going to be my first book, What Makes the Great Great, but turned out to be my third book for Success Magazine. And one of those articles made it to the desk of W. Clement Stone, who, as millions upon millions of folks know, was a business partner and a confidant and an advisor and a personal friend of Napoleon Hill, who was America's most prolific self-help writer. In 1970, Napoleon Hill, 6970, Napoleon Hill was writing a black version of his all-time classic, Think and Grow Rich. He only got 100 pages into the manuscript before dying of a stroke. He was 87 years old. And W. Clement Stone held on to those 100 pages for 16 years, the day that I walked into his office. So I've been blessed. I've written 5 books, 2 of them bestsellers, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, and The Wealth Choice. And, of course, actually 3, What Makes the Great Great. And just trying to impact lives as I continue this journey called life.
Wow, that's an awesome story. I had no idea that you had a chance to actually meet W. Clement Stone. I remember reading some of the stories he did about, I believe it was the Combined Insurance Companies of America. I believe that was company.
Oh, yes. And, in the 1970s, W. Clement Stone was one of the wealthiest in the world.
Right.
The year, Rossi, the year that I was born, 1950, there were only 100,000 millionaires in the United States. The year I was born, 1950, 100,000 millionaires. Only 5 were black. And I interviewed 4 out of the 5 and shared their story in Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. Now you fast forward the videotape and you got, wow, you got hundreds of, actually you got about, 12 million millionaires in the United States? No, you got more than that. I got to look at my latest data. 35,000 are African American, and over a 7-year period, I rubbed shoulders with minimum 1,000 black millionaires.
Wow, that's That's incredible, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it kind of gets me into the next point. I know you talked about the difference in the discrepancy between the types of millionaires, and then one thing I know from my personal experience as an entrepreneur and as a business person is that everything you do really does start with your mindset. So I actually just want to jump right into a quote that you had in your book as Millionaire Lesson number 1, I believe it was, which says that if you want to know how people feel about themselves, look at their bank account. Money is the greatest measurement of your mindset, and wealth is less a matter of circumstance than it is a matter of knowledge. Could you explain to me in a little bit more detail by what exactly you mean by that?
Oh, yes. That was taken from the interview that I had with John Johnson of Ebony Magazine. You know, Rossi, everything starts, everything occurs to you twice in life. First the inner, then the outer. First the thought, then the thing. First the mental, and then the physical. And you're not going to develop wealth until you develop a wealth consciousness. Prosperity begins in the mind, but ends in the purse. And that hour interview that I had with that paragon of excellence, as I said, John Johnson of Ebony Magazine, he really took me fast forward. And even Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill, he wrote 16 books in his lifetime. You can go to any bookstore and you could purchase about 8 or 9 of those books. And the 7 years that it took me to write, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, I could see that he was becoming more and more metaphysical in his writing. And until we focus in on the inner, Martin Luther King said, your life is officially over the day you begin to talk about, think about, and discuss all the things in life that don't matter. Well, what matters? The greatest gift that we ever been given by our Creator is the ability to change our mind, is to change our thinking. And without getting religious or spiritual with you, whenever, that master, that carpenter from Galilee, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ would ride into a village and he would heal the sick and he would heal the depressed and he would heal the impoverished. Rossi, the last thing he would say to him is, go and sin no more. Well, sin doesn't mean that you've done something bad. Sin doesn't mean that, okay, while you weren't looking, I took the last cookie out of the cookie jar, or I went in my wife's purse and took $1 and didn't tell her that. It doesn't mean that. Sin isn't anything bad. Sin means that you have mentally missed the mark. Sin means that you need a correction in your thinking. And the reason why he said that, because if you don't change your thinking, the next time I come back into this village, you're still going to be sick, you're still going to be depressed, and you're still going to be impoverished. Well, we live in a capitalistic society, and Rossi, capitalism is not a dirty word. Capitalism means everything is for sale. That's all it means. And you take the word capitalism, write it on a piece of paper, CAPITALISM. Well, you take the Latin derivative of the word capitalism, CAPUT, kaput. What does it mean in Latin? It means head. What's the one thing you must use in order to survive in a free and open society? You must use your head.
You're listening to an exclusive interview found on RestoreBlackAmerica.org. That's RestoreBlackAmerica.org.
We don't live in a society that is divided between rich versus poor, or black versus white, or liberal conservative, Republican Democrat, male versus female. No. But we do live in a society that is divided between, dreamers versus non-dreamers. And people get in trouble in life not because they wanted too much. They get in trouble in life because they settled for too little.
That's really profound. And you know what I never actually thought about? It's a really good point. You mentioned about capitalism, sort of, as you said, the prefix meaning head. And what is it that you wear on your head? A cap, right? Which is the good word of capitalism. So that makes a lot of sense. That's really interesting. But since we're on the subject of mindset, though, and you brought this up about people settling for too little, so I want to talk a little bit about self-sabotage. Now, as we know in the black community, obviously there's been a lot of outside sabotage done in our community. However, over time, it sort of seems like some of these things become self-perpetuating. So, for example, if you grew up poor, a lot of times you end up developing maybe a poor mentality, which creates negative reinforcement such as, the whole world is against you, or the white man's got his foot in your neck, or if someone just gave me something, I could, make something happen, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, but you simply, just, you got to make a decision, which is the second law of wealth, that poverty will have no place in your life. Make a decision that you won't be poor. I mean, I tell my students all the time, I teach at Clark Atlanta University School of Business. I ask them, so what did my mother do for a living? Here I got a doctorate from one of the top 15 or 20 schools in the nation. Okay, pat myself on the back, but whoopee, okay. But what did my mother do for a living? My mother had a 7th grade education. My mother was a nanny. I tell my students, go watch the movie The Help. Well, that was my mother. And when my mother would read the newspaper, Rossi, any word that she didn't understand, and she was cognizant of her lack of formal education, any word that she didn't understand, she would get a pen or a pencil and circle the word. And after she got through reading the article, she'd get a dictionary and look it up. But my mother, with a 7th grade education, she would correct my English. She made a conscious decision, okay, so, I don't have a formal education, but that's not going to stop me from moving forward. Well, if you can do it in one area of your life, you can do it in another area of life. That's Ray Kroc. I don't know if you saw the movie, and I have yet to see it, The Founder. Yeah.
Yes, I
but
did.
Ray Kroc, he invented that whole concept of scale. Can you scale it? And what is scale? Whenever you see best practices in an organization, can you take it to every nook and cranny of the organization? And so, here she is with her 7th grade education, and that didn't stop her from, like I said, from moving forward and doing some of the things that she wanted in life. Well, what I found from these black millionaires is that, poverty, okay, so they came up in an impoverished environment. Here's a story of 35,000 African-American men and women, and for the most part, they're all self-made. In other words, they created the wealth themselves. They didn't come from a wealthy environment. And how did they do that? The second law, they made it a decision. I had a great interview with a gentleman by the name of, Victor McFarland. Victor McFarland, the first thing we said in this interview was, okay, there are 35,000 millionaires in the United States. But in 2007, 2008, Rossi, there are 6 black billionaires in the United States. But in 2007, 2008, there were about 10 other individuals who were right on the cusp of joining billionaire status. But because of that recession in 07, 08, they couldn't hold on to it. And one of them was Victor McFarland. Here's a guy who made his money and still makes his money in real estate development. And our past president, Obama, whenever he would go out to the Bay Area in San Francisco, he would always meet and dine with McFarland. Well, McFarland was born and raised single-parent household in a small working-class community, Middletown, Ohio. Okay? And his mother lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Middletown, Ohio. And in the foyer area to that apartment was a couch. And that couch would open up into a bed, and for the first 12 years of his life, Victor McFarland and his oldest sister would sleep on that couch at night. And when he shared that with me in the interview, I said, damn, Victor, that had to be rough, man. That had to be tough. He cut me off at the knees. He said, no, Doc, I don't want any sympathy. I don't want any empathy. When I look back on it, those were probably the best 12 years of my life. And I said, what do you mean? He said, because sleeping on that couch for 12 years, I made a conscious decision that poverty would have no place in my life. Now, here's a guy net worth about $600 million right now, and his goal is to join billionaire status. And when I asked him how to do it, he focused in on that principle. Well, scale it. I'm not saying that, hey, man, you could be worth $600 million, but you can certainly raise your standards. I mean, you look at my readers, and you look at your listeners, where we are in life, by the standards that we have set in every area of your life. There's only 3 things you got to do. Number 1, you got to turn your should-dos into must-dos, wherever they are in your life. Turn your should-dos into your must-dos. Number 2, got to get around the best. Read the best books. Go to the best seminars. Go to the best, conferences. Go to the best workshops. Listen to the best speakers, whatever. And last but not least, you got to make a conscious decision. What is called a MTP. What the hell is an MTP? It is a massive, transformative purpose. A massive, transformative purpose. And probably the best example of that is 1998. Here you got Kodak, who comes up with the digital camera. Kodak invents the digital camera. All right, 140,000 employees, upstate Rochester, New York. What? A market cap of $24 billion for Kodak. About 10 years later, Kodak goes belly up. They go bankrupt. They didn't even know what they had. Here's a company that invents the digital camera, 1998, goes bankrupt, and you got 13 empowered souls, 13, nondescript souls out in Silicon Valley take the same concept that Kodak had that goes bankrupt, and they come up with Instagram. Well, wow. What did those 13 committed souls out in Silicon Valley have that Kodak never had? An MTP, a massive transformative purpose. How in the world can you take the same product and come up with Instagram, market cap of $6 billion, and go bankrupt? And that's what you need.
Wow, that's good. No, thank you for actually expanding on that, because I was going to ask you about that as far as the, self-sabotage, some of the things that we could do to fix it. So I love what you're saying about, sort of having a massive purpose. So, and I want to say that too. So let's say someone's listening to this and they say, you know what? I'm going to make the decision right now that poverty is no longer going to have a place in my life. What are some of the things that someone can do right now or today to, let's say, to start to develop a millionaire mindset, to start to take them in the opposite direction?
Well, right at the top of the list, find your area of excellence. The fourth law of wealth. Focus on your unique strengths. Focus on your unique skills. Find your area of excellence and then pour your whole heart and soul into it. And how do you find your area of excellence? Ask yourself 3 simple questions. Number 1, what do I love to do? What do I have a passion for? What can I throw my whole heart and soul into? Question number 2, what would I do for free? If no one ever paid me a dime, if no one ever gave me financial reward for my efforts, what would I do for free? Because when you're doing what you love to do and you do it for free, your work is your play. And if your work is your play, you'll never work a day in your life. And then the last question, question number 3, what comes easy to me but difficult to somebody else? In other words, what is your competitive advantage? The number one of the top professors in the world is Michael Porter. Michael Porter, School of Business at Harvard. And he wrote the classic, your competitive advantage. What is your area of competitive advantage? And when you find your area of excellence, Rossi, I didn't choose to be here and you didn't choose to be here. The bottom line, we were chosen. Well, what does the Bible say? Okay, if we were chosen, the Bible says, complete thy noble task. In other words, you were assigned something to do. Brother, the day the Lord blew breath into your lungs, you were assigned to do something. You ain't going to be here forever. You live the normal life, and the normal life is 70-something odd, years on earth, about 30,000 days on earth. Time isn't running out, but baby girl, your life is, man. Mm-hmm. So what have you been assigned to do? Find your area of excellence. I tell my students all the time, man, coming into work, coming into class, guy on the corner got a cardboard sign, I'll work for food. Man, you got that guy with that sign has just as much opportunity as Bill Gates, just as much opportunity as Oprah Winfrey. My student says, sure, Dr. Kimbro. Yeah, because anybody can wow the customer. Anybody can do more than what is expected, more than what is required. Anybody can go the extra mile. Anybody can develop, a passionate, committed mind. And just like I said, the passionate, committed mind can never be defeated. Did you hear what I said? If the passionate, yes. if the passionate, committed mind could be defeated, there'd be no Bob Johnson, or BET. There'd be no Oprah Winfrey. There'd be no Bill Gates. And like I said, just as much opportunity as Bill Gates. I mean, you look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates had an opportunity. Okay, when Bill Gates launches Microsoft, okay, what? And about 10 years later, about 15 years later, he has an opportunity. Well, first thing he does, he digitizes, Encarta. Great move, Bill. But he passed on the opportunity to buy Wikipedia. Did you know that Bill Gates had the opportunity to buy Wikipedia and said no? And said no.
Did not.
Rossi, what the hell is Wikipedia? 6th largest website in the world.
Right.
And he said no. I mean, go ahead and look at Blockbuster. 3 times Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix and said no. And said no. How are you going to tell you got an opportunity to buy Netflix and pass on it? So, I mean, there's no such thing as a lost opportunity. They're just capitalized and monetized by other souls who possess the passionate, committed mind.
No, that's a really profound answer, and I want to kind of and move on from there. I know we're dealing mainly with economic issues today. However, we still have to deal with cultural issues within our community, because I believe that does also affect some of our economic issues. And one of the biggest issues.
No, you got to just the opposite. It is an economic issue. It is. I mean, yeah, what may look like a cultural issue, and I don't care what you take. I mean, look at incarceration. Oh, man, that's an cultural issue, man. Look at all the brothers, and that's economic. Rossi, right now, you got 6 companies, and they're all construction companies, that are bought, traded, sold, on the New York Stock Exchange right now. You got 6 construction companies that are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange right now. And their number one product or service, they build jails. 6. And they're doing quite well. You can go to New York Stock Exchange and you can buy shares in them right now, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So what in the world does that mean? That means that, man, if their number one product is to, build prisons and jails, and you are incarcerated, that means that, somebody's making money off of you. Somebody is making money off you. Take it a step further. So, black man, when you act a fool, when you shoot the place up because somebody stepped on your Air Jordans, or somebody walked into your turf wearing a red hat when you're in a blue area, and you shoot the place up and you are thrown in jail, and you know that these 6 companies are making money off you every time you are incarcerated, what does that mean, Rossi? That means that you are an active participant in your own demise. That's an economic issue. That's not a cultural issue. That's economic, brother. You are an active participant. That means, gee, Dr. Kimbro, nothing has changed from slavery. You had at least 4 presidents who bought, sold, and traded slaves from the Oval Office. And the same thing is going on now with incarceration. That is an economic issue. You look at what we call the hood. That is completely economic. Why? Well, we came over here, man, the earliest blacks that came over here in the 1600s, no such thing as a ghetto. Well, who created the ghetto? Your federal government created the ghetto in 1934 with redlining. Federal Housing Administration. You had federal government's quote-unquote best thinkers all huddled together, and they took out a red pen, and they looked out this SMSA, Standard Metropolitan Statistical Area, all right? And they said, what we highlight in this red area, we're going to withhold investment. We're not going to put in a dime. We're not going to back entrepreneurs. And if we do find, couples, African American, who are eligible for a mortgage, if we do give them, a mortgage, we're going to increase the price and we're going to double blah, 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 this, that, and everything. So what happened? You created the ghetto when you withheld economic investment. And nothing has changed. I can take 2 lions and I can take 2 tigers and I can put them in the same cage. Put them in the same cage. And if I feed them, they'll live forever. Those 2 tigers and 2 lions will live forever. If I feed them, they can stay in the cage and nothing will happen. But if I don't feed them, Rossi, what's going to happen? They're going to eat each other.
That's right.
And the same thing is occurring in our community. They're not feeding us. So what do? We eat each other. And that's what you see in Chicago. They're eating each other. But we didn't create that. That's an economic issue. And that's not me. That's W.B. Du Bois. People say, oh, man, the wealth choice changed my life, blah, blah, blah. Man, I'm a Johnny-come-lately. Because in 1897, your most prolific scholar, W.B. Du Bois, wrote The Negro in Business. And you go ahead and get that book and you read the first 30 pages, and he has 2 profound quotes. Number 1, the man or woman who won't control his or her finances won't control anything else. And what did he mean by that? If you don't care about the money in your pocket, what do you care about black-on-black crime? What do you care about the lack of high school graduation rates? What do you care about teenage pregnancy? What do you care about HIV rates in your community? If you don't care about the money in your pocket, you ain't going to care about anything else. And then number 2, he says, nothing positive will ever occur in a community that fails to circulate its dollars.
Yes.
Again, an economic issue. What we think is a cultural issue, what we think is political, nope. It's economic. If you fail to circulate your dollars, my brother, nothing positive will ever occur in your community.
No, I totally agree with that. I definitely think it does come down to economic issue. But what I was going to say, as far as the other half of that question, you kind of alluded to it. It was a perfect segue. I was going to say that one of the biggest issues that we have in our community is that we don't trust one another. So a lot of time that puts us in a situation, or puts a lot of people in a situation where they feel like they either have to go outside the community or whatever to try to get some progress or try to work with other ethnic groups or different types of groups where maybe we're not totally accepted there either. So my question to you is, how do we overcome this challenge? Do you feel as though we need to try to stick it out and work, or what about the mentality of the people who feel like?
Well, you again look at it from cause and effect. Look at it from cause and effect. A lot of times we see the effect and we think that's the cause. Okay, we don't trust each other. The bottom line, as this interview got started, everything starts twice in life: the inner, the outer. Okay, the thought, the thing. The reason why we don't trust each other, we don't trust ourselves. So when we look at our community, we have to begin with ourselves, okay? Trust yourself. Raise your standards. Raise your self-esteem. Raise your level of vision. Raise your personal level of vision of what is possible, okay? So, if we don't, trust each other, then we have some work to do as an individual. And that's where it all starts. I can look at my community and I can say, oh man, we need A, B, C, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, and I can look at all the negative things and blah, blah, blah. And any change that's going to occur is going to occur when I begin to raise my level of vision and see what's possible. Here I am in Atlanta, Georgia, Rossi, and I can take you to Savannah, and let's look out across the Atlantic Ocean. And when you look out across the Atlantic Ocean, you might say, man, it looks like the sky and the water meet. Well, you and I both know that the sky and the water will never meet. Otherwise, there's no such thing as gravity. If I stood on the railroad tracks and I looked down the train tracks, you would say, man, Dr. Kimbro, it looks like the tracks are coming together. Well, the tracks never come together. Otherwise, the train would fall off the tracks. Now, those are 2 examples where your physical eye lied to you. So when I look at all the nonsense, quote-unquote nonsense that's going on in my community, oh, man, we're not doing this and we're not doing that and blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. Yeah, but once I raise my level of vision and see what's possible, what we call about keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the prize. Raise your level of vision. Change your level of belief structure. anything and everything is completely and totally possible. And that's what I found with these individuals, and over again, of what is truly possible. Well, we need more visionaries in our community. We need more folks with a passionate, committed mindset. We need more folks with the Silicon Valley mindset. And what is the Silicon Valley mindset, Rossi? I don't care what company you go to in Silicon Valley. Only the best and sharpest people do their thinking. My mind goes back to when Steve Jobs, you got his graphic designers and you got his engineers. They walk into his office and they look at, a picture of his cell phone, and they ask him, they say, Steve, what are those symbols on the screen? He says, those aren't symbols. Those are icons. Those are apps, and that's the way the screen of my iPhone is going to appear. And his graphic designers and his engineers tell him, oh, we can't do that. Jobs was frustrated, and he was incensed. He says, listen, don't tell me what you can or can't do. Don't try to steal my dream. You can do that, and I'm not going to accept anything less. Less than 6 months later, they come back, and that's the iPhone. So, same thing with Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, Rossi, he got more than 250,000 people August 28, 1963, to show up in Washington, D.C. on a sweltering summer day. More than 1/4 of them were white. And he didn't have an iPhone. He didn't have a website. He didn't have a pager. He didn't have Instagram. He didn't have Twitter. And what they didn't show up because, Martin Luther King wanted them to show up. They showed up because they wanted to be there. And what did he have? He had the passionate, committed mind. So, yeah, we can talk about all the problems that we have and blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. Or we can do what the top companies in the country do, and that's they let the best people do their best thinking. Now, how does that translate to the black community? Well, you might ask me, Dr. Kimbro, where do you do your best thinking? Well, Rossi, I could tell you. I come home from class, hug and kiss my wife. I reach into my refrigerator, get me a cold beer. I walk out onto my back deck, open up the doors, walk onto my back deck, and I'm on the deck, and I'm overlooking the woods behind my house, and I just let my mind roam. That's where I do my best thinking. So if you want to tap into my mindset, then take me on a retreat and let me walk through the woods with a cold beer in hand when I'm completely and totally relaxed and my mind can just roam. And then you ask me some of these questions. Dr. Kimbro, what would you do about A, B, C, X, Y, Z? What would you do about 1, 2, 3? And I say, man, I know exactly what I would do. That's powerful context. That's a powerful context.
No, that's great. That's an interesting perspective. And, of course, we're dealing with our community. And with that being said, and you mentioned, coming home and giving your wife a hug and a kiss. So that actually, leads me to my next point where I want to move right over to the concept of family. When you look at people, even people who Americans or whoever would consider elite, whether it be the Kennedys or Rockefellers or whatever, you realize at the end of the day that these are essentially just families. So my question to you is, how important is family in creating and maintaining wealth from your viewpoint?
Well, that's the number one. That's the most important organization that you belong to, is the family structure. But the bottom line, it always comes back to one. And people say to me, man, Dr. Kimbro, I'm married. My wife doesn't believe in my dream and this, that, and everything and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you're looking at it from a small context. When you look at the data, particularly of black millionaires, man, when I asked these black millionaires, I used a 118-question survey, Rossi. And when I started out, I made the distinction that I didn't want any athletes or any entertainers. Now, I had to interview some entertainers, but I made that context. I didn't want those. I wasn't going after those, and simply because we are overrepresented in that area. But again, obviously, there were some folks who I had to interview. I had to interview Steve Harvey. I had to interview Damon John. I had to interview Tyler Perry. Tyrese spoke in my class, blah, blah, blah. But I asked him 118 questions, and I said, how old were you when you earned $100,000? And the data came back 30 years old. Then I said, how old were you when you got the big idea when, okay, I'm earning six figures right now, I might be able to go on to seven figures, millionaireship. And the data came back, they were 41. Then I asked another question, what is your average age right now? And, of course, these are all millionaires, and the average age is 52. So here it is. Black millionaire, earns $100,000 at age 30, gets the dream that they could be a millionaire at 41, bang, the average age is 52. So you could see the timeline. What in the world does that have to do with family? Because, overwhelming majority of black millionaires, married for 20 years, between 2 and 3 kids, wife doesn't work, blah, 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 this, that, and everything. Well, that means family is an absolute big context. And I look back over the course of my life. That doesn't mean that, the road's not going to be rocky. I mean, here I am. There were some times that I quit and my wife didn't. She believed in the dream. There were some times when she quit and I didn't. I was the one that believed in the dream. But the bottom line, Ross, we didn't quit together. And that's what I found out with these black millionaires. Somebody always held true and kept their eye on the prize. Now, I don't know what, again, the readers and listeners out there, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know the trials and this, that, and everything. But what I don't want to hear, the Lord is testing me. The Lord's not testing you. God's not testing you. God gave you the dream. I mean, where in the world do you think dreams and visions come from? That's your creator knocking on your subconscious asking you, do you want more out of life? No one's testing you. That's your low self-esteem challenging you. Do you think that you are worthy? Do you think that you are deserving? So family is, like I said, a huge context. And family can support you. Family can challenge you. Family can believe in you and tell you what is possible. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to you as an individual.
No, that was a great answer. And you mentioned something else that I want to go back to. You mentioned coming home and how you like to go on your back deck, or you mentioned, maybe having to walk in the woods to be able to sort of get your thought process together, which, obviously environment is really important. And so with that being said, it's obviously a lot has to do with your, surroundings and things of that nature. So I'm sure you've heard of the saying that it's not always what you know, but who you know. And one of the challenges that we have in the black community is maybe we don't always know as many people with wealth or power as some individuals do from other cultures. So my question is, what are maybe some places or organizations that black people can go to find other progressive black folks who have that sort of prosperity mentality?
That is a great question. And that is part and parcel some of the problem. Years ago, Malcolm Gladwell, and I know you're familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, Blink, David and Goliath. I got all of his books. And he's on a TV show, and he's being interviewed, and the host says to him, he says, Malcolm, in the few moments we have left, is there any trend out in society that has you concerned? Anything that you're thinking about that, you're really concerned about? And Gladwell paused for a second, and he says, yeah, there are a few trends out there that I'm concerned about. He says, well, in the few moments that we have left, share that with our viewing audience. And Gladwell said the following. He says, I'm really concerned about the hundreds of thousands, and then he changed it. He said, make that millions. I'm really concerned about the millions of black elementary school children who go to school and live in neighborhoods in which they will never see a black man in a suit and tie. That has me concerned. That was such a profound statement because it goes back to we don't profile as a race our wealth creators. I mean, a couple of days ago, me and my wife sitting end of the day channel surfing and bang, turn to the Bloomberg Network, and what do we see? This is only a couple of days ago. See about an hour interview Bloomberg has with Phil Knight of Nike Shoes. One of the many thousands of billionaires in the United States. Here I am right now. I'm in my study, and I got flat screen TV on the wall in my study, and I can give you the controls to that, Rossi, and you can go ahead and you can turn to one of the financial networks, and you might find Bill Gates being interviewed. You might find an interview of Warren Buffett. You might find one of Howard Schultz of Starbucks. You might find, any, billionaire. But when's the last time that you've seen one of your billionaires, one of the 6 black billionaires, or any of the millionaires on TV being interviewed? That's part of the problem. Why? Because what thou seest, that thou beest. And you talk about, networking and where can we go to meet these individuals. That is critical because your net worth oftentimes will be a reflection of your network. It's not who you know. It's what you know about who you know. And people don't care about you until they realize how much you care about them. And that's basically how I wrote the book, The Wealth Choice, and even Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. I just networked. I just went from one individual to that individual, and I quit counting at hundreds of interviews. I said I can't count anymore. I just went to this individual and that individual. Now, you talk about the organization. You got many organizations. At the top of the list is George Fraser's organization, Power Networking Conference. He does that every year, particularly in June. You can go to NAACP, Urban League, whatever. But the point is what I said early, to get around the best, go to the best workshops, go around the best conferences, because that's where these individuals are, 100 black men, 100 black women. And, get around those individuals who are like-minded. Watch out for the toxic people. Stay away from the naysayers. Stay away from the unbelievers, non-achievers. I did not say don't love them. Continue to love them. But there is a different mentality that these individuals possess. And you got to guard your dream. What I tell my students, you got to be true to your devotion. That's Kimbro, what the hell are you talking about? You got to guard your dream as if it's a sacred trust. The average individual in our society gets 4 ideas a year, any one of which, if you had the courage, if you had the guts, if you had the fortitude to chase your dream, would make you financially independent. But what does the average individual do? We dismiss it. We say, oh, man, that's blah, blah, blah. That's not going to happen. That's not going to. No, man. Come on. You only get 4 a year. You better guard it as, hey, man, this is a life changer. But we dismiss it. That's powerful context. That's a powerful technology. So, yeah, find the best conferences, man, and, get around these individuals. I look back over the course of my life, and I look in society right now, all the people that we revere, all the men and women who we look up to, all the folks that we hold on a high level. Rossi, at one point in their life, they were ridiculed. At one point in their life, they were thrown under the bus, kicked to the curb. But you look at them now. How in the world did they did it? They got around like-minded individuals, man. I had a guy, I always close out my last day of class at school with a session that I call Take a Millionaire to Lunch. And what do? I always bring in a certifiable millionaire to speak to my students. I spring for lunch. My kids come in, grab a box lunch, sit down. And I've had a who's who of folks speak in my class. Like I said, I had Steve Harvey spoke to my students. Tyrese spoke in my class. Michael Bazin spoke in my class. Ayanna Van Zant spoke in my class. Tavis Smiley spoke in my class. Ron DeVoe, one of the guys from Belle Biv and DeVoe from the dance group, the singers,
music group, right?
Yeah, New Edition spoke in my class, and they all shared the same thing. That, man, the tough times, this, that, and everything, and what kept that dream going. They found individuals who believed in them. They found individuals who lifted them up. And who were those individuals? Same folks who went through what they went through, man. Believe in yourself when no one else will. I asked Tyler Perry, I said, Tyler, how in the world do you go from sleeping in your car in New Orleans to sleeping in your car in Atlanta, Georgia, to building a $145 million production studio? And he said to me, nothing but the grace of God. I asked Kirk Franklin, I said, Kirk, from a little small town outskirts of Dallas, Texas, man, you didn't build one fortune. You built two fortunes, man. How in the world did you do that? And he said, there's something sweet about that name, Jesus. And I spent 2 days with Kathy Hughes of TV One. She's one of your 6 black billionaires. And for 1 year, for the first year after she bought her first radio station, she slept on the floor. For 1 year in that radio station, in that restroom down at the end of the corridor, well, that was the bathroom that she and her son, bathed every day as they ate off a hot plate in her office. I mean, so there's, you got to think about that. Get around these individuals who can see from a distance what you can't see up close.
Okay, no, that's a great answer too. And one thing you mentioned, I just want to jump back for a second because you mentioned turning on the TV and some of the imagery that was up there on the TV. It seems like when it comes to black people, especially those who are financially successful, it seems like they always try to boil it down to 3 areas, right? I always say sports, drugs, and entertainment. It's like either you're going to be a rapper, a ball player, or sort of play the streets. That seems to be the main examples that we have. I know you've dealt with a lot of different individuals. Out of the different black millionaires that you have, is there one that stands out in particular that maybe we should study, or one who you find to be the most profound that you think will be helpful to someone listening to this interview?
Oh, yeah. You can go ahead and get that book, and I list the businesses in which, these black millionaires can be found. Number 1 is franchising. Number 2 is hotels, motels. You got so many folks now who get into fast food franchising. They stay there 3, 4, 5 years. They take that, and they buy the first hotel, buy the first motel, and the like. Telecommunications is another one. Yeah, so, we only see from the outside, okay, yeah, entertainment and sports. Well, that's like, any other group. There are hotbeds out there. And what do I mean hotbeds? Okay, if you want to be a shortstop in Major League Baseball, what is the hotbed for you to associate with? Well, you got to go to the Dominican Republic. You look at those 30, 35 Major League Baseball teams, and you look at the shortstops for all those baseball teams, and chances are they all came from the Dominican Republic. Why? Because that's a hotbed. If you want to be a Major League Soccer player, what is a hotbed? What country has produced more soccer players than any other country? And that's Brazil. You go to Brazil right now, and all those kids, they're playing soccer, man. They got one dream, man. I want to be a major league, man. Man, I want to be with the MLS, blah, blah, blah. You want to be a high-end fashion designer. Well, what is the hotbed for that? You got to go to Malaysia. You got to go to Singapore. You got to go to France. You got to go to Milan. Those are the hotbeds. You want to make it in technology, Rossi? Well, what's a hotbed? You got to go to Silicon Valley. Don't waste your time. I mean, you could be like Zuckerberg. You could be like Bill Gates. You don't even need a college degree. Just get around those like-minded individuals. Go to Silicon Valley. You want to win the National Spelling Bee Contest. What is the hotbed for that? It's called the North-South Foundation. Dr. Kimbro, what the hell is the North-South Foundation? You go back, 20 years, and East Indians were looking for a field that they could dominate. I tell this story in my latest book. I'm working on a book right now called Icon. And I shared the story. It blows people away. East Indians 20 years ago, Rossi, are looking for a field that they could dominate. They said, man, we can't dominate sports. And we can't dominate the fashion industry. And there's no way in the world that we could dominate TV. What is the one field that we could dominate? And they looked at it and they said, well, we're pretty good in language arts. You know, the average East Indian kid speaks 3 or 4 languages because we are a melting pot around the country. So, well, that's what we'll focus in on. We'll focus in on language. As a matter of fact, let's focus in on words. As a matter of fact, let's focus in on the definition and spelling of words. And they came up with the North-South Foundation. And what is the North-South Foundation? Takes Indian kids as early as the age 3, 4, teaches them 100 words a day. And for the last, 14, 15 years, your National Spelling Bee winners have all been East Indian kids. Have all been East Indian kids. Where white children, they won't teach them 100 words until they're about 7 or 8 years old. Indian kids do that at age 3, 4, 5 years old. Big difference. So those are hotbeds that you have got to get around that will make, will make a critical difference in your life.
Wow. No, that is a really interesting perspective. I definitely, for people listening to this, they should definitely look into that. That was a really, really interesting perspective. Now, for my last question, too, could you maybe give us a little bit about...
You know the number one industry that has produced more millionaires than any other industry. What is the number one industry that produces more millionaires than any other industry in the United States? Dry cleaning.
Technology.
Dry cleaning has produced more millionaires than any other industry. So there are so many opportunities out there right now that we probably pass and we probably dismiss.
Wow, that is really true. I never would have thought. I would have said maybe technology, but now I had no idea. Dry cleaning produces millionaires. That is really interesting. But okay, so we're going to conclude this interview. But could you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you're doing currently, as well as how someone can get in touch with you?
Okay. Like I said, I'm an open book, www.denniskimbro.com. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, all of them, Facebook. You can reach me at Clark Atlanta School of Business, although I won't be back until end of August, 1st of September. And what I'm working on now, as I shared, working on a book called Icon. I'm looking at businesses, industries, individuals that their number one goal is not excellence. The number one goal is perfection. And perfection sometimes can be attained and sometimes it can't. But the reason why they pursue perfection is because they know they will surpass excellence. And what are some of the businesses, organizations, individuals, and industries? I'm looking at the Hermes fashion brand that produces the Birkin handbag. I'm looking at Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. I'm looking at the top ad campaign, and the top ad campaign occurred in 1989 when it came up with the introduction of the Lexus automobile. I'm looking at Arab Emirates Airline, the number one airline in the world. So, I'm looking at the 2014 MIT football team. This will blow you away, Rossi. 2014 MIT football team won their national championship. And as you know, they don't offer scholarships at MIT. All those 53 guys on that MIT football team are walk-ons. But when you look at the 53 players on walk-ons, 17 of the 53 graduated valedictorian from the high school class, and 24 of the 53 aced the SAT. Speaking of that, I'm looking at students that did ace the SAT and ACT, so those are some of the folks that I'm looking at to find out the common chords and common traits and habits that they have.
Okay, excellent, awesome. Thank you very much. Well, I definitely want to encourage everyone to listen to this interview to definitely check out Dr. Kimbro. Definitely, when you get the opportunity, check out his book, The Wealth Choice, Success Secrets of Black Millionaires. It is an awesome, awesome book. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Kimbro, for being on this call today. I think the stuff that you shared was very profound, and I believe a lot of people are going to be blessed by it. So thank you for your time.
Oh, you take care, man. Call anytime. Thanks for having me. I had a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
What's going on, everybody? This is Rossi Eason, founder of the Restore Black America Foundation and author of the Restore Black America book. And you know how this whole thing came about, man, is real interesting. Years ago, I had a friend of mine introduce me to something called the Willie Lynch letter. And if you don't know what that is, it was actually a transcript of a speech given at a slave owners convention. And it talked about how to control black people, not through force, but through psychology, talking about putting old against young, light skin against dark skin, male against female. And it pretty much outlines all of the problems that we have today. So when I read this plan and I said, if this is a plan to destroy black people, if I reverse engineer this, could we create a plan to rebuild the black community? Hence the term Restore Black America. So this book is actually broken down into a 6-step action plan that outlines a restoration process for the next 100 years. Those 6 steps are culture, economics, family, politics, health, and spirituality. And the way the whole premise goes is that this letter was actually written in 1712, and it said that if you actually put this plan in place, that you'll be able to control black people for the next 300 years. 2012 was actually the end of that 300-year mark. When I wrote this book, it came out in 2013, which is the first year after that 300-year mark. I founded the Restore Black America Foundation as a way to actually implement this 100-year plan. Not only to give people the information, but the actual tools in order to make a change. So basically what I've done is put this book together in a 100-year plan for the black community. Restore Black America is more than just a book. It's more than just a foundation. It's an entire movement sweeping across the black community. So be sure to stay tuned for our documentary as we outline the 6-step action plan for restoring Black America and taking our culture back. Holla.